All right, everybody, here we go. Welcome to episode 2 of our Kimagure Orange Road watch along. Hope you're enjoying your evening. Hope you've got a nice cold. I'm still working on this case of Sapporo, so hopefully you're enjoying a nice cold Japanese or otherwise beer. Enjoy whatever beer you want. Don't let anybody tell you what to enjoy. If we let people tell us what to enjoy, would we be here now together watching Orange Road? I don't think so. I think we'd be doing something else with our time because I don't think there's a lot of people out there telling us to enjoy Orange Road. I think it's probably us telling other people to enjoy Orange Road. Speaking of which, that's a t-shirt right there, y'all. That is a t-shirt. I hope that by the time you are seeing this, everybody has received. Hopefully, you received your t-shirt like many, many weeks ago. Actually, I sent those things out long ago. If you have not yet received your t-shirt and you're on a $10 or higher tier, holla at me. Get at me. All right. Because I want to make that right, first of all, because I want you to be wearing your avocado shirt with Jingoro looking looking Jingoro-ish, looking like, what do you want from me? That cat is perfect. He's like the embodiment of like, so what? What do you want from me? He really shouldn't be a Japanese cat at all. He really should be an Italian cat, maybe Italian American from New York. Because in this image on this T-shirt, he's like, "What do you want from me? What do you want from me?" Doing the De Niro face from like Goodfellas, like, "What do you want from me?" Anyway, it's probably enough of that. Um, Hopefully, I've wasted enough time. Everybody's burnt enough time that everybody's in to the live stream. Whoever's going to watch the live stream is here. You're here. You're in, and we can get crack a lacking. That's why I was wasting time at the beginning. It's not because I like to ramble or listen to myself talk and I'm unfunny. I was killing time for folks. I wanted to kill about 2 minutes for folks so that we can get started and you know crack them if you got them. Let's do it. Drink them. It's Sapporo time. You know what I say when it's Sapporo time? All right, let's get it going. Episode 2. It's like the first one, but it's one. Yeah, it's like he's got two girlfriends in this opening. It also communicates. Look, it tells us there's a love triangle. There's two girls in his life. He's actually positioning himself physically between the two girls. Right, he's sitting in between the two girls. Um, so obviously he's like, he could go either way. Right, that's the love triangle. The point of the love triangle. He's pulled in each direction, but also that intro communicates to us that he's a goofball too. Right, because the guy can't even sit down properly. Like, how many times have you sat down on a bench, but then accidentally, instead of sitting down on a bench, fell into a pond? I don't think it's something that happens to people very often in real life, even on benches that are positioned very close to ponds. You just really have to fuck up pretty good to intend to sit down on a bench, but then find yourself plopping into a pond. And the purpose of it, though, is not to stretch the credibility of us as viewers, like looking at this, like suspending our disbelief. But the idea is that they need to communicate that he's graceless, he is unathletic, he's a goofball. I mean, he's a klutz. He's gonna fall. There's pratfalls. It's a comedy. Expect him to step on a rake and for it to come up and punch him in the head. So it's a very like letting us know that there's some physical comedy involved. Physical comedy typically involving pratfalls and other type of like body. Somebody's getting whacked in the nuts. And if you think watching people get whacked in the nuts or whacked in the head or like shot in the balls is funny, then this is your humor, right? So again, this is a very handwritten motif where the Japanese text appears to be handwritten. I did try to imitate that in my cover art. And it's a lemony kiss, right? And here we go. This is like the Sprite colors. This is like the 7-Up colors, right? It's like a lime green and kind of this like hangover piss yellow. It's like when you've had when you've had a vitamin that has like a lot of B vitamins in it and you pee and it looks like Mountain Dew. This looks like Mountain Dew. This is like the color of Mountain Dew right here. And I have to admit, I like this color of green. It's like my second favorite color, is that like lime kind of bright, really saturated green. But that hat, it makes the hat stand out via the contrast. You've got this red hat, but everything else is this shade of Mountain Dew yellowish green, because presumably there's a sunset occurring, and it casts this pallor, this Mountain Dew color on everything, this lemony color on everything, and except for the hat. The hat is still this saturated red. You almost feel like the hat, it's under a different lighting. It's not even lit the same as the rest of this scene, because everything is like a yellow green. The buildings, the masts, Kasuga's hair, which is normally a dark shade of brown, grayish. But that hat, it doesn't even look like the same yellowish sunset light is shining on it. And of course, it's a dream. I mean, she's confessing to him at the opening of the second episode. It's an unsustainable model right there. You cannot have your character confess at the very beginning of the second episode in a 48 episode love triangle rom-com. And we get this reflection in the water. We see reflections a lot in Orange Road. I mean, it's not just limited to Orange Road, but we see a lot of reflections. We see a lot of characters reflected in surfaces, glass, windows, etc. And that's just an early example. And of course, he wakes up kissing Jinguro's ass. I love the effect of like the film, because it makes a sound like the film kind of running out of a projector. It has a very kind of old school feel, but it's a great way to show you that his dream is coming to an end. And he wakes up with every light on in his fucking room. Why is his room so well illuminated while he sleeps? Does anybody sleep in a room that brightly lit? Even in the morning when the sun comes up, you should have some shades drawn, some blinds, I don't know, some curtains. I'm not saying block all the light out. If you don't like that, don't sleep with a blackout. But my God, it's like every light in his room was on. Like the overheads were on. Why do you need those on? You should wake up and it should be a little bit dark in his room. Shouldn't be every light is on. And he was kissing Jinguro's ass, literally. Here we get the first taste of Takashi as kind of a, in the first episode, he did have a short appearance and he did kind of remind the kids not to use their powers. He seemed more authoritative there, and his authority was not undercut as it is here. Here, his authority is literally undercut by his daughter when she causes his paper to explode into tiny shreds. And it's here that you really first get the idea that, he wields this authority. He's the patriarch of the family. He's the father, and his kids should listen to him, especially in a society such as Japan. I mean, the elder, the father, should really be the leader of the family, and everybody should listen to him and abide by his rules. Obviously, that it's not the reality in a family with teenagers. I don't care what the culture is, right? I mean, it's like biologically hardwired into all human beings, regardless of ethnicity or culture, that we're just supposed to fuck around as teenagers. That's part of what makes it fun, right? But he did reveal that Kurumi is the one who fed him the information. She ratted on Kasuga. Snitches get stitches, by the way. And she exploded the paper. She's reminding him, not so subtly, that like we have this psychic power that you don't. So you have this authority vested in you by the cultural vestige, but you're not able to, when really push comes to shove, you're not able to exert your will over us because we have the power. I like this too. She, turns to him. It's beautiful animation right there where she turns to him, and for a moment he's seeing her as she appeared in his dream. It's almost like a premonitory dream. We don't know that he has premonition dreams yet, but it's almost like his premonitory dreams where he'll see an image and then he'll see that image then reflected in real life, and he gets the idea like, oh no, my dream is coming true. And here she's being nice to him. He did the right thing. He's like, whatever, I'm just going to keep walking because I don't want to get smacked again like yesterday. I'm going to keep walking. So as he's walking past her, What does she do? She draws him back in, right? She didn't have to say anything to him either, but she does. She chose to say something to him because she doesn't want him to dislike her. She knows the last interaction they had was unpleasant, and she smacked him right across his face, and he looked like a sad little loser on his knees. And if she'd left it at that, if she'd stayed mad at him, he wouldn't have talked to her. He would walk right past her. And, he probably would have still had a crush on her and still thought about her and stuff. But it's almost like she reels him back in by talking to him there and by choosing to be nice to him in that moment, only to then completely ignore him when he waves at her here. So he's getting all sort of like hot, cold signs from Ayukawa. And that's engineered from the beginning, is that he's not supposed to know what to do with Ayukawa. And part of that is his inexperience. He doesn't know how to navigate her personality because he's never dated anybody before, let alone anybody like her. He doesn't have past experience to draw on, but it's also supposed to show us that Ayukawa is mercurial. She is whimsical. She'll be sweet to him one moment and then smack him on the face the next encounter, and then the encounter after that, she's sweet to him again, and then he waves to her in class and she's like, fuck you, kid. So she's the Kimagure one. She's the one who he doesn't know what to expect or what he's going to get from her. Chikaru is the one who's very consistent mood-wise. She always forces herself to be happy, even if she's not happy. She puts on that exterior. I think Ayuko is a little bit more open and obvious about what she's feeling. And Kasuga does manage to ingratiate himself to her a bit here, because what he does successfully, and I know I discussed it in the episode where I talk about Ayukawa and where I talk about recently where I talked about Ayukawa and less recently where I analyzed this episode, what he does right is that he supports her in this scenario where really no one's clapping for her at the end of this routine, because she kind of like bucked the system a little bit. She gets up there, she does this routine, flawless, right? Perfect balance. Look at that. She just does a freaking flip on the a front aerial on the freaking balance beam, lands perfectly. I mean, doesn't even stutter. Perfect. Which again, believable because of her training in athletics and martial arts. I firmly believe that all of the martial arts training and all of the sports she's played her whole life can lead up to such good, balance and poise and control over her body. And Kasuga's truly impressed here. He's like, holy shit. I knew she was good. She beat up all those dudes yesterday, and everybody look at they cut back to their faces. Even the teacher is like, she's not even writing anything. She's just looking up at Ayuko like, wow, we didn't know she was this good at this. This is incredible. This is a person that we underestimated. Then Ayuko realized what she was doing. She sees everyone mouths agape looking at her, and she just thinks, I don't need to do this. I don't need to finish. They know I'm better. They know I'm the best. Look at their faces. Their mouths are hanging open. So she gets off, and everyone's kind of mad because she didn't finish up in the traditional or proper way. Kasuga claps for her. No one else claps. Everybody's just looking at her like she got a dick drawn on her forehead. And Kasuga claps. So even though she was mean to him in the previous scene, he waved at her and she basically snubbed her nose at him and basically said, I'm better than you. I'm too good for you. I'm not going to wave back at you. I'm not going to smile back at you. I'm going to pretend like you don't fucking exist. Like my cat. But instead of then in the next scene being like, well, fuck her because she act like she was too cool for me when I was just trying to wave at her. Like I caught her looking over at me, and so I waved at her. But he's like shows this loyalty, shows this kind of commitment to her in a weird way. Not a relationship kind of commitment, but like the commitment where he is, he's willing to clap for her when no one else is. He doesn't care what all the other students are doing or thinking, but he's going to express that he's impressed, legitimately so, and rightfully so. He's impressed with her routine. And here he's thinking, Ayuko's sitting there watching him, she's observing him in this basketball game. We already know from the intro, watching him fall into a pond, that he's not a particularly athletic dude, but he's thinking about using the power here, using it again. After our setup at the very beginning of the episode where his dad's like, hey, I heard you use the power yesterday at school and you had a good reason to, but still don't do that shit. So he's thinking about using it again. We get this nice cut to commercial. with the eye catch when he's like just going for it. And when we cut back, it's a good use of a commercial break. I mean, it's one of those things about television that we kind of don't even think about it now, because most TV, it's like Netflix, there's no commercial breaks at all. There's no built-in kind of here's where you would cut for commercial, and we know it when we're producing the thing. Like, you watch an old show on Netflix and there's no commercials anymore, but you can still tell kind of where they would cut to commercial, because when they come back, it's like it's not seamless. There's definitely a seam there. There's a seam here. And for me, that's part of the nostalgia of watching this thing, is like I'm reminded that this is 1980s television, and there would have been a commercial break right there to show advertisements. But when we cut back, that, you know, we don't get to see what Kasuga wound up doing, at least not immediately. That we see Kasuga sitting there alone. He's not riding high on someone's shoulders, so he clearly didn't win the game for them. He's sitting there alone, kind of sulking. Then we see the flashback. And here's the image that I turned into a GIF on the YouTube. Hopefully you guys are subscribed to my Knights of Summerside YouTube, because I put compilations on there, and I turned that into a GIF, and I repeated it and reversed the second piece. So it looks like she's taking the cigarette out and looking because she hears something, and then deciding like, I'm going to keep smoking, and puts it back in her mouth and goes back to trying to light it. So it's one of those seamless GIFs, and I'm clearly proud of myself because I brought it up here. I probably shouldn't have. Oh, well. But here's a weird reason to want to date somebody, right? I always thought this is a weird reason to want to date somebody. She witnesses him use the power. She doesn't understand that what she's seeing is superhuman, because she doesn't say, wow, he's an Esper. She just thinks he made a miraculous shot. And it also proves that he really would have won the game if he'd used the power. His power is that good that he would be able to move the ball easily through the hoop. So he's pretty awesome. Instead of, he's an Esper, oh my God, he can do mind tricks with his magic power. I need to tell the authorities. I need to tell everybody. Maybe he's even an alien. He's a spaceman. But instead, she's just like, wow, he made a miraculous basket. He must be pretty cool. The entire previous episode, she thought he was lame. She was rude to him. She's rude to his sisters. She pulls a total 180 right here. And she comes up to the sisters and starts kissing their ass. She starts saying, oh, what is your brother like? I'll tell you what he likes. Titties. Ass and titties, because he's a 15-year-old boy. What 15-year-old boy is not interested in naked ladies? That's what he likes. But, you know, she's asking, you know, what kind of girl he likes and stuff like that. And it's just an odd reason to want to date somebody. It always struck me as just a, you know, I'm sure they could have thought of some other scenario, but I think maybe it's appropriate because, you know, he was thinking maybe I could impress Ayukawa and she might like me more if I win the game. And if I use the ESP to cheat and win the game, then, you know, maybe the end result will be Ayukawa will like me a little bit more. And the irony is that he decides not to do that because it feels dishonest. He doesn't want to cheat Ayukawa. It's almost like removing her agency a little bit. Like she can't make a choice using free will if he fools her into being impressed by him. You know, so it's almost like wouldn't feel genuine if he made this basket and then she likes him. Now, Kasuga has no idea that, and I don't believe he ever learns that Shikaru witnessed him making that basket, and that's why she decided she wanted to date him. So I don't think he realizes that, like, it worked, just not on the person that he was thinking about using it on. Like, he wanted to impress Ayukawa so that she would want to date him. Instead, he decides to do the right thing, and it doesn't move the needle with Ayukawa, but then he does the thing when he thinks no one's looking, and Shikaru sees and she wants to date him. So honestly, his logic, I thought it was kind of suspect, but it seems like it's kind of flawless. His logic. We're also introduced to the Katsu-san here. The Katsu-san is one of those interesting things that I think got played up a little bit more in the anime. I don't know if it existed in the manga. I don't remember if it was ever mentioned in the manga. It might have been one of those things that sort of mentioned as an aside. They kind of talk about it a little bit, but like they make a really big deal out of it here in the anime. And I just remember being 14 or 15, seeing this for my very first time, and mid 90s. It was 95, I think. And just thinking, man, I want a fucking Katsu-san. The way these people love Katsu-sans. Oh, I'm going to complain about this. Also, when have you ever bumped into somebody and accidentally kissed them in the mouth? I've bumped into somebody and accidentally headbutted them. I've been headbutted in the teeth before from accidentally bumping into somebody, but I never like smooch somebody on the mouth perfectly. It's always I got hit in the teeth or I hit my head on them and knocked them over. But it's not like, oh my God, he kissed me coming around the corner. And even if you did, which you won't and you don't, and it doesn't happen. But even if you did, you got to know it's an accident. He came running around the corner. He didn't know you were there. Even if you like accidentally smooched, she can't possibly think that he did that on purpose and that it's like a sign that he likes her. She just calls him darling anyway. I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I like it. I mean, it's part of the what's kind of kooky about this show. You sort of have to suspend your disbelief, but even still, with the basket thing, I don't love that she falls in love with him over this basket, but it sort of makes sense in the context that he thought it would impress Ayukawa. It wound up impressing Shikaru. So it's sort of a parallel again between Shikaru and Ayukawa, where they sort of act as foils. The reason why Shikaru likes Kasuga, at least at first, is kind of shallow. And talk about it a little bit in I Was a Cat, I Was a Fish, the OVA. Talk about what's cute about Kasuga. She and Ayukawa talk about, this cat reminds me of Ayukawa, or the fish reminds me of Ayukawa because he's indecisive. Ayukawa has some insight into his personality. The fish reminds Shikaru of Kasuga. Oh, he runs away so cutely, or he's cute when he runs away, or whatever. She doesn't seem to know him the way Ayukawa does. And I think we see that here. It's like she doesn't have as good a reason for liking the guy as Ayukawa does. Like talking about her, talking shit about her when she's right there, she's clearly within earshot, and they're talking shit about her, how pointless her punishment is or whatever. But it's an example of how her delinquency causes her to be disrespected by the teachers and the faculty at the school, even though, as we learn in later episodes, she's got the best grades at the whole school. She got the best grades. Nobody's got grades better than her. The teachers really ought to respect her intellect, because she didn't even show up to class and she still does third place on all the tests in the whole school. So just gives you an idea that the hostility that the teachers feel towards a delinquent student, they can be a little bit more open. And I don't know if that's a function of the time, like this is the mid 80s and you could be a little bit more vocal about which students you thought were dirtbags, or if it's a product of the culture and it's like they're allowed to be a little bit more open about delinquent students, or maybe it's a little bit of both. I mean, maybe it's both the culture, the value they place on education, and conformity, really. I mean, and that's the problem with being a delinquent, right? Is the delinquent is not conforming. They're not showing up to class when they're supposed to. They're not turning in their homework when they're supposed to. They're not looking forward in their seat and being respectful and polite to the teacher like they're supposed to. It's really because the delinquent refuses to conform. I mean, her grades are good, so it can't be her grades. It has to be her refusal to conform. And so the teachers, they don't like that. It's part of what makes them dislike her. But Kasuga showed solidarity there. I mean, he showed her that he's willing to go to bat for her. I mean, not only is he willing to clap for her and congratulate her when she's done a great job, regardless of what the rest of the school is doing, she also goes to bat for Ayukawa against the teachers. Regardless of what the teachers say, he's not gonna conform either. He's gonna be a little bit nonconformist in that he's going to continue his friendships with these people. So I like it. And then Ayukawa's being sweet to him again. So clearly, even though he didn't win the basketball game, something he did worked and impressed her. And it was him standing up for her. And it was him clapping for her. I mean, it was really Kasuga's attitude towards her this entire episode in the face of the way everybody else treats her. The students, the teachers, nobody else is kind to her. Nobody else gives her that social support. And she honestly, she acts like she doesn't need it. She doesn't want it. But this kind of shows you that when somebody does show her that social support, and when somebody does stick up for her and go to bat for her, maybe she really does appreciate it. And he clearly ingratiated himself with Aikuwa in this episode. So where the last episode ended with him getting smacked in the mouth and sulking, and they're not in a good place, here they end in kind of a good place. He's thinking in his voiceover that he could even maybe have a shot with Aikuwa. If he just reaches out with all his might, which is like him saying, if I play my cards right, if I really act right, then, maybe I could get this girl to go out with me. He says it in a little bit more poetic way, but it is what it is. I'm clearly not a poet. I'm too coarse. And she's a little bit inscrutable. Again, we end with this kind of final shot of Ayukawa in a profile. Last episode, she was playing the sax. This episode, we have this kind of slow pan in on her face in profile. She's not looking towards the camera. She's looking out the window, out the side of the frame. So it's clearly an image from Casca's point of view. And again, she's kind of inscrutable. We don't know what she's thinking. We don't really know what's going on in her head. We get an idea of what's going on in Casca's head. I mean, he's basically saying, I got to try really hard, but I think I might have a shot with this girl, and I'd really like to date her. We know exactly where Casca stands, but we don't see as much of where Ayuko stands. We don't really have as a clear an idea of what she's thinking, what she's feeling towards Casca. So she seems a little bit more ambivalent, especially as a result of this episode, because she's nice to him, she's mean to him. She's mean to him, she's nice to him. Things end okay, but still, what is this girl thinking? And I think she's playing her cards right. That's really what's happening, is she knows exactly how to intrigue a man, right? Little hot, little cold, be sweet to him. She reels him back in. At the beginning of this episode, he's ready to walk right past her and not talk to her. She reels him right in. I imagine that line from The Godfather 3, the famous one that they make fun of a little bit in Sopranos. I always love it when they would do that in Sopranos too, because they would like really ham it up. Silvio or whatever would ham it up. He's like, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in, and he just over the top with it. I love it every time he does it. But that's what it is. Just when he thought he was out, Ayuko pulls him back in. And just like that, he's back in. Here we get the disco scenes. God, I always love the disco scenes too. I'm going to talk more about that when we watch this one together, y'all. I love the disco scenes. There was just something so romantic in the literary sense, not in the candlelit dinner Valentine's Day sense, but I mean in like the romance poets, the 19th century poetry, like the romanticism. I just always thought there was something like something romanticized about that imagery of the discos. I always fucking love the discos, because every time I would go to a club, in my own misspent youth of my 20s, I mean, in college, I went to plenty of clubs and bars that have like dance floors and stuff like that. And I did plenty of that in my youth. But I just always, in my mind, it always had to live up to the level that Orange Road was. And they never quite did. There were a few experiences. I went to a few clubs, some of the cities, New York, especially, Atlanta. There was one in Atlanta. There was a couple, in some of the bigger cities that I've been clubbing in. Vegas has some pretty good ones too. So I would say out of the cities that I've been clubbing in, the top three are New York, Vegas, and Atlanta. And, there have been a few experiences that are like, close. This is pretty cool. This is maybe almost on the level, because, the vibe, the lighting's got to be right, the music. But the problem was it wasn't 1987. And that's what I'd really like to do with a time machine is I want to go to a fucking club like that in 1987 when they're playing all the 80s bangers, remixed maybe, and everybody's dressed like that. I always loved that aesthetic. And if you think I talked about it a lot now, wait till we get to episode 3 next week, and I'm going to yap about it a ton then, because that's like my favorite. I love the club scenes in Orange Road, because that to me is like, that's it. That's what I would be doing every night. Anyway, thank you guys for watching along with me. If you didn't watch along with me, cool. Like, look, it's up on Patreon. In fact, you probably know that, because if you didn't watch along live, then you're hearing these words because you're watching the video on Patreon. Regardless of where you watch it, whether you watch it with me live or you watched the video later after I uploaded the final one on Patreon. Look, I love you. Thank you for coming along, being on the ride, posting comments, all that good shit. See you guys next week. Enjoy your